What if I told you that the system we live in today, capitalism, contains within it the seeds of its own destruction, that the very contradictions it's built on will eventually tear it apart? Sounds a bit dramatic, right? But what if these ideas aren't just conspiracy theories, but the central thesis of one of the most revolutionary thinkers in modern history, Karl Marx? Today we're diving into Marx and his radical understanding of capitalism using something called dialectics. Stick around, because understanding this could change how you see the world around you, your job, your money, your society. Okay, before we get too deep into Marx's critique, let's quickly revisit what dialectics actually means. Dialectics is the idea that everything in the world is constantly changing and evolving through contradictions. These contradictions don't just exist to cause chaos, they push things forward, creating new realities and new possibilities. The concept of dialectic is derived from the philosopher Hegel, who was an idealist, suggesting that the conflict of ideas exists at the level of thought and consciousness. However, Marx inverted this perspective, directing attention to material conditions, especially the economic framework. Marx believed that history wasn't just a slow march toward progress, but a series of conflicts between different classes and material forces. Capitalism, in Marx's eyes, was no exception. So how does this play out with capitalism? For Marx, capitalism is full of contradictions. On the surface, it might look like a system of freedom and individualism, right? People can start businesses, earn money, and enjoy a certain level of autonomy, but here's the catch: this freedom is limited and unequal. In capitalism, there are two main classes: the bourgeoisie, the owners of the means of production, and the proletariat, the working class. Here's the contradiction: while the bourgeoisie accumulate massive wealth from exploiting the labor of the proletariat, the workers remain stuck in low-wage jobs, barely scraping by. This sets up a tension, a class struggle, where one side's gain is the other side's loss. This is where Marx's dialectics come in. The contradiction between these two classes, thesis versus antithesis, creates the potential for a social revolution, synthesis. The workers, Marx argued, would eventually rise up, overthrow the bourgeoisie, and create a classless society. Capitalism, by its very nature, would be torn apart by its own internal contradictions. But wait, it's not just about the workers and the capitalists. Marx saw even deeper contradictions within capitalism itself that would eventually lead to its collapse. For example, the drive for profit leads capitalists to continually push for more efficient production, automation, globalization, outsourcing. This sounds good on the surface: lower costs, more profits. But here's the issue: the more capitalists automate and outsource, the fewer jobs are left for workers. As capitalism becomes more advanced, the gap between the rich and the poor widens. The rich get richer, while the working class is either displaced by technology or stuck in dead-end jobs with stagnant wages. Marx predicted this growing inequality would lead to more instability, more discontent, and eventually a tipping point where the system would no longer be sustainable. But it doesn't stop there. Marx also saw capitalism's contradictions play out on a global scale. As capitalists look for new markets to expand into, they create a world economy that is interconnected, but also incredibly unstable. Take globalization, for example. Companies exploit cheap labor in developing countries, increasing their profits. But this creates a race to the bottom, where workers are underpaid and local economies are destabilized. The contradictions between the global capitalist system and the needs of individual workers or nations continue to cause crises, economic crashes, environmental destruction, and social unrest. So, what's the endgame in Marx's dialectics? It's not a happy one for the capitalists. Marx believed that capitalism would eventually reach a breaking point. The contradiction between the ever-increasing concentration of wealth and the mass of poor, exploited workers would become unsustainable. The workers would rise up, overthrow the system, and establish a new economic order. The socialism, one where the means of production are owned collectively and wealth is distributed more equally. Now, I know what you're thinking: isn't that a little extreme? And look, I'm not saying we're headed toward a revolution today, But Marx's critique is still incredibly relevant. We're seeing massive economic inequality, the concentration of wealth in the hands of a few, and a global system that feels more unstable than ever. Now, I'm not saying that everything Marx predicted has come to pass or not, but his analysis of capitalism remains powerful. We live in a time where automation is displacing jobs, wealth is more concentrated than ever, and the global economy seems increasingly fragile. All of these are contradictions Marx highlighted long ago. In fact, Marx's ideas are having a resurgence today, especially with the rise of movements that critique wealth inequality and call for a more just economic system. People are starting to ask, can capitalism continue to function when the contradictions are so clear? And this is where Marx's dialectics can still give us insight. So to sum it up, Marx's dialectical critique of capitalism was all about understanding the contradictions within the system, how these contradictions drive change, create instability, and ultimately could lead to a system overhaul. Whether you agree with Marx or not, his analysis provides us with a powerful framework to understand the forces shaping our world today. Do you think Marx's predictions are still relevant? Are capitalism's contradictions causing problems we can't ignore? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown of Marx's dialectics and its critique of capitalism, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for more philosophical discussions. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.